So here's an incredible opportunity today for us to learn and be inspired by these incredible heroes. Now, they'll have some powerful insights. They'll leave us with lasting impressions. And, I think this is a great opportunity. Now, joining us on stage, we've got Joey Balfour, who's our Assistant Director of Oral History. Joey spent hours and hours with many of these incredible veterans. And it's really these testimonies are our centerpiece of the museum's collection. Now, it's important, I think, to introduce these veterans early in the journey so that you have an opportunity to know who they are, but also engage with them throughout this experience. And so, that's the intent today. I hope this is just the beginning of your engagement as we go forward. So, what we'll do is we'll start out. I'll tee up some questions, and then we'll go whichever direction we need to. We've got our comrades here on stage, but I want to do a quick shout out to two of our veterans that are not able to make it to this panel today. And so, nope. So one, first, Paul Hilliard's not able to travel with us. Many of you know Paul, but he would have been our Marine. An incredible service, nearly 60 missions as the radio operator and rear gunner in a Dauntless dive bomber in the Philippines. And, he's sorely missed here today. And hopefully, we'll see him on another adventure. And then Bob Persichetti, unfortunately, is not able to make it this morning, had a medical issue last night. Bob, many of you know, served in the Navy in the Pacific Theater. He was on the USS El Dorado, which was an amphibious force command ship, both at Iwo Jima and then at Okinawa, and then finished the war in the Philippines from that. And as Stephen mentioned yesterday, he was able to see the flag raising on Mount Suribachi in that campaign. So incredible piece there. So we got the assistants here coming to help us. It's all good. Yep. We're going to continue mission. But what we're going to start with, Jack. Jack Appel, a U.S. Army in the European Theater, finished the war as a private first class at the 17th Signal Battalion, which had been the battalion supporting 1st Army headquarters. And so on D-Day, he was in 1st Army headquarters, and then later came ashore at Normandy and continued the war with them up through the liberation of Buchenwald, and both in France and Belgium, Germany. A pretty incredible experience in that opportunity. And so, we want to start out with, Jack, what would you like? Can you tell us a bit about yourself and really the high points of your service in the war? Here's a microphone for you right there.
If I knew I was going to live this long, I would have taken better care of myself. My experience in the Army was, I was in the Army 1 month and I came down with spinal meningitis. I lost the hearing of 1 ear. I spent 56 days in the hospital, had a 28-day convalescent furlough. When I went back, OCS was closed and there wasn't much opportunities for me to become a better soldier, but I tried my best. The highlight of my career was being one of the first soldiers in Buchenwald, the notorious concentration camp, and that's an experience I would never forget. I've been interviewed by the Holocaust Museum. They sent a TV crew down to my house and spent the whole day with me, and you can see it on the internet if you Google Jack Appel. And it was a great experience. I don't know if it's hard to say that I enjoyed every time, but being at headquarters, see, I was a night telephone operator while I was going to college. And when I went into the service, the Army put me in the Signal Corps, which was much safer than being in the infantry. And so I came through the war pretty good.
Well, good. And then now let's turn to Ed Buffman. So Ed was in the Navy in the Pacific Theater as a gunner's mate second class on the battleship Missouri. Ran an anti-aircraft gun crew. He's gun captain with 25 sailors under your supervision, both in Okinawa, Iwo Jima, and then supporting airstrikes into Japan. And so, similar, Ed, tell us a bit about your experience, and then, what are the huge takeaways that you'd like to share with this group?
Well, I was on the battleship USS Missouri and served on it from 1944 to 1946. We shot down 11 kamikazes. We were hit by one kamikaze, and the first one that hit us in Iwo Jima. And if you get down there now to Hawaii, you'll see they don't even bring that up, which is kind of crazy. So that's my biggest experience is when that kamikaze hit. Of course, we shot them down. My group shot them down. We were all cool, not afraid, and just to tell you the truth, it was not a great experience. It was an experience for young kids. And when we first went out there, everybody was, put the makeup on. You put makeup on, call it makeup. For the flash guards, the 5-inch guns firing over your head. Sometimes they'd make your nose bleed or blood come out of your ears. So they put that on. They put their, the reserve. We went over the side. They had the steel helmets on. Now, you got to picture that now. The kids going out there, 25 guys, full uniform with us. After we were there 2 weeks, no makeup. The helmets were off. They only wore the piece of plastic on the helmet, That's how cool these guys were. And when they say kamikazes, they're coming in at you. I couldn't get these guys up off the deck after a couple weeks. They'd say, our airplanes will shoot them down. That was your guards. Shot 'em. So these guys were just cool. And we shot down one kamikaze, my group, you wouldn't understand this, but the barrels of the 5-inch were right over your head. So if you shot and hit this, it would blow back on you. This guy, Bernard, and I know it was our group, shot him down, picked that plane up, shot it right down, pieces came all over us. And that's just to explain, you got to picture that. They weren't shaking, just cool. These guys were like that. One other story of the kamikazes coming in. A guy named Zemsky had my first group of guns. And during it's pitch dark at night, and he opened up the first 5. He emptied the shells. All 4 guns, besides him, opened up. They called me from Sky Control, one of the officers, a Marine officer up there. He goes, Buffman, what are the guys shooting at? I said, kamikazes, sir, kamikazes. He said, kamikazes, they're 50 miles away. These guys are shooting, So this is the kind of stuff, and I'd say, why did you open up and empty? Zemsky did. So that's the kind of guys I had. They were good. One more thing, when the kamikaze hit us on the starboard side, we were on the port side. That plane came in, boom, it hit the whole side of the ship there, aft on the port side, where we were on the port. This is starboard. The flames are coming up, there's smoke all over the ship. I got up, I gave it to another gunner's mate. I said, take over while I go check this. So I walked between the ship there and I went down. Christ, there was smoke and fire and everything. Oh, and the Japanese guy was hanging out of a 5-inch mount. That's a famous shot of World War II, by the way. He was cut in half, and he was hanging out of the 40 millimeter, and he had a 30 caliber machine gun front of it off his plane stuck in the barrel of this. So you got a picture of this scene. So I looked over there and I saw all this going on. I went back. The guy said, "How was it, Buffman? How was it?" I said, "Cool, no problem." You know, I was afraid, they'd get panicky or leave the guns. That just gives you an experience. What a great group of guys we have.
It's great to be at sea with
Okay.
somebody who's real cool, right?
My wife said,
So Albert Carr's up next. Here's Albert. He's a U.S. Army private first class. He's in the 115th Infantry Regiment in the 29th Infantry Division that landed on Omaha Beach on D-Day. A month later, he becomes the Browning automatic rifleman for his squad, wounded several times. I think that allowed you to miss the Battle of the Bulge. But other than that, continued through to the end of the war as an infantry soldier and then on occupation duty. And so, Albert, a similar question, tell us briefly about your experience and the highlights of that, just so that we can have an appreciation for what you did. Here's the microphone.
"Did you hear the question?"
Come again on.
I said, "Did you hear the question?"
Not clearly.
What'd you do in the war?
Tell them a little bit about what you did in the war.
On D-Day 1944, my platoon was held in reserve for the second wave of the invasion, which was 115th Regiment. We went in there D-Day, went in on land for about 3 days, just moving in to take territory, to secure things. About the third night, when we was taking a break, we had sometime during the day, we had passed some of the reserve that was held in there to protect their beach. We passed them up and they came in behind us during the night. Around 1 o'clock in the morning, we had taken a break. And when our break was over, we got ready to move. One of the guys about 20 feet from me reached down, picked up his rifle, hit the trigger, the safety was off, shot himself in the foot. They loaded him on the stretcher and they decided we couldn't move the rest of the night with people having to be carried. So they carried us into the field. When the tail end of the column come up, our supply officer was behind with the Jeep load of water and supplies that he'd been trying to get to us for a day or two. And when they opened fire on him, they wounded him and then eventually killed him. After all of it was over with, we got out of the field and got separated from everybody else. Wound up with 7 other soldiers scattered out there, just on our own. The next morning, we were trying to get back to where we thought we could be somewhat safe, and my division commander showed up and said to get back down there. They was forming a battalion back up. I went down back to the field. During the night, I had, when the shooting started, my squad leader come up and said, "We need to get protection out." Okay, so I got a couple of rations out of my backpack, put it in my pocket, and bundled everything back up, felt around on the ground and found a billfold. Well, I, not knowing who it was, I just held on to it and left. Later on, I found out that billfold was a German billfold with Danish money issued to the soldiers they had defending there where we were going in. And so finally, I saw in the field our regimental commander the H Company commander, their bodies had been killed there. And I found my backpack that I had left in there. My squad leader was laying across my backpack. While he went back into the field, I have no earthly idea, but he was laying across my backpack. I left it there. Our regimental commander was Colonel Warfield, but I don't remember the H company commander. But that billfold told us that we weren't the first into the field. We had to be the latter part of it. That morning, there was one injured German in the field there. He was leaning up by an apple tree. So they had to be in there at the time we were being shot up and all. And that was the first real combat we had gotten into, getting in on the beach and all. It was just like any other maneuver. And that we lasted in for a few days. Then on the 11th day I was in there, I was wounded the first time.
So next up, Dr. John Chapinski. Now, John was a sergeant. There he is.
I did not understand.
You're good. We understood.
You're good.
So John was a fire direction specialist in a 4-deuce mortar battalion, landed on Utah Beach in late June, and then participated in 5 campaigns into the end of the war. You know, by my calculation, that their mortars supported 23 separate divisions in the campaign. So, John, how about you? What can you tell us a bit about your experience in the ETO?
I have to stop and think about that for a bit. Now, when I got out of high school at the age of 18, that was when you had to sign up for the draft. And I was immediately called into service and ended up at Fort Meade, where they sent you out to different areas. And my friend that went with me had to return back to the States because his brother was killed in an airplane crash. So I ended up at the 86th Chemical Mortar Battalion, and he ended up with the 87th. And on the way to, we didn't know where, we kept pestering the train commander. Where are we going? What unit are we going to? And he wouldn't answer us at all. And then as we got closer to Camp Swift, Texas, he finally opened up and he said, "You guys are going to the Camel, CAMEL division." And that was very disturbing to most people because they knew what camels were like. And it so happened that the address on the envelope that he had, the middle initial was C, and he couldn't think of chemical or anything like that. Camel was the only one that he thought of. So it ended up that we ended up with the 86th Chemical Battalion. And when we got to the camp at Camp Swift, communications were lacking, so they didn't have a barracks ready for us. So we stood out in the sun in formation until they got us ready, got the place ready for us to occupy. And at that time, you had to go, every place you had to go, it had to be in formation because they were afraid that at that time that you could be contaminated with measles or some type of disease, and they didn't want to spread it around with everybody else, so you did that all in formation. We spent a year in camps with training, and it was with the 4.2-inch chemical mortar. There was one that was developed from a combination of, I think it was an Italian mortar and another country's mortar. But the difference was that this was a mortar that was much larger than any other one in the Army. And the diameter was 4.2 inches, and it was a rifled barrel, which no other mortar had. So it was capable of firing gas shells, and that was basically what we were going to do. If the enemy started to fire any gas attack, we were ready to combat them. But it never happened, and thank goodness it didn't. So they were able to realize that that mortar would also fire a high explosive shell and a white phosphorus shell. So after about a year's training, we were sent to New York, and we got on a ship and went to England. The ship that we went on was the third largest ship that they use for vacations and so forth after Queen Elizabeth and Queen Mary. And so we had over 1,000 troops on that ship, and it was sent to England, and we ended up in northern part of England after traveling 7 days zigzagging in the open ocean, where so much of the shipping that was sent to Russia was sunk by German submarines, but we didn't see any subs, so thank goodness it was a good trip. We got to Scotland, and we immediately boarded an English train for a little town called Port Sunlight in England, where we were billeted with 2 soldiers to a house if they had the room, and we had our headquarters at their central business area, and there we stayed for 2 months training and getting acquainted with the English people and that type of thing. And then we got a call to go to Southampton to be ready to go into combat. And we went by jeep. In the States, we were always trained with just mortar carts that would carry these weapons, and they were heavy. And one nice thing about Texas, they had these beautiful sandbars that you had to crawl through and get stuck with all the time. But we became a motorized outfit in England and shipped off to Southampton, and we were sent. The whole battalion was on 6 ships. We were sent across the English Channel to Utah Beach, and when we come to Utah, before we came to Utah Beach, one of our ships was sunk by a mine or a bomb or whatever. They didn't ever find out, and they had to abandon ship and take everybody back to England to be refitted and so forth. And they had 1 casualty, 1 fatality during that time. We landed in Utah Beach and immediately drove about 5 or 6 miles inland to an apple orchard that where we reunited ourselves and got established. And I can remember that apple orchard to this day. It was in total bloom and had the most powerful smell that even today I can still smell it.
Well, don't give away all the good parts.
Pardon?
I said don't give away all the good parts. We're gonna wrap it up right here, okay?
So we've got next is Kenneth Maher. Kenneth, another infantry soldier, corporal in the 23rd Infantry Regiment in the 2nd Infantry Division. And Kenneth came ashore as a replacement about 2 weeks after D-Day, and then fought through with the 2nd Division up through the Battle of the Bulge, and then was captured by the Germans in January, and then ultimately liberated after one of those forced marches in the winter. And so, Kenneth, over to you. If you could tell us a bit about your service and experience as well. Here's a microphone.
Well, I should like get out one war, but I jumped into another war. I came over to the United States when I was 14 years old from China in 1940. World War II was already started. The Japanese invaded China in 1937. Anyhow, I was drafted when I was second year high school, just an 18-year-old kid, and sent into Omaha Beach 2 weeks after I landed in Omaha Beach. First thing I noticed, they put me on the train down to Brest as a replacement in the 2nd Infantry Division as a rifleman. And I had a really narrow escape. Almost died outside the Brest because we were trying to get into the city to roust the German out of the city. While we were standing around looking down at the city of Brest, the war was going on down in the city. Good thing the lieutenant told me, you better dig yourself a foxhole. So that's what I did. I jumped into the foxhole, try to see how deep it was. No sooner I got in there, a mortar shell hit right next to the foxhole. And the guy next to me, he was standing up in the foxhole and get all cut up and didn't survive. But I was just full of mud and didn't get hurt. After that, they put me in a tube train, or what they call a boxcar, heading to the Ardennes area near the Siegfried line. So we were dug in the Siegfried line, and we thought the war was going to be over. It was really quiet and getting cold and freezing. But we didn't know the German was getting ready to hit us back. But thank God, I caught a cold. The medic says, we better send you back in the hospital. 2 days after I recovered from the hospital, that was the Battle of Bulge. The German hit us December the 16th, And right away, they hand me the rifle. We needed you back up there in the front. So there it was. We were chasing the German, tried to chase the German back to where they started. But I was, I think 3 days after we were chasing the German, we come to this forest. The captain says, we gotta get those German out of the forest. There it was, and we have a tank to support you guys. So you guys follow the tank. So it was, we followed the tank and start shooting. And when we got to the edge of the forest, the German already moved out. In fact, they were bunkered they were in still warm. I went in with the other comrade, another guy. We were so cold and wet, sit down and tired. You know how you are, you're cold and wet and didn't get enough sleep. Once you sit down, you just fall asleep. So we just fell asleep. And the next morning, the German make the counterattack. One of the fellow next to our foxhole came over. They say, you guys better get up the German and hit us back. So I followed this guy to the next foxhole. One guy already dead. Only 3 of us left. So we tried to shoot back to the German. Another, the guy next to me, he said, I saw one guy heading this way. He said, he started raising his head and tried to shoot. And all of a sudden, a machine gun shot right through his head. I was really awful looking. He just fell over. And no sooner after, with 4 German got a gun trained right at us. That's when I get the free prisoner of war. And they noticed me. He said, one of the Germans says, we got the Japanese here. We got a Japanese here. Hey, you know what they call me? They call me Booby. That's in German, baby. Because I'm so small. Anyway, it was 4 of us. They escorted us out of the forest. And there was a highway running right next to the forest. I noticed a half-track. That's an American half-track rumbling down the highway. And a German SS guy stick his head out. He said, well, all the gangs are here. I can still remember, I heard a song that says, all the gangs are here. He speaks perfect English. Well, anyhow, they walk us 4 days back across the Rhine because they captured so many Americans during the Battle of Bulge, they run out of camp to put them. So I got, they put me in a sort of like a farmhouse. And the sanitation was not that good, and the food was just soup and black bread, and quite a few number of people die and get sick. They just give up hope. They say, oh, we'll never see the United States again. For me, I just hang on. And pretty soon they moved me to a bigger camp, bigger installer, down in Limburg, Frankfurt area. And there I was 2 months down there. Finally, the American caught up with us. The German just walk us out of camp. We don't know where we're going. And pretty soon they just abandoned us in this little city near Gießen. And I was so bad looking, ragged, have diarrhea, and real dirty.
Is that where you were?
2 months, 3 months without bath, no change of clothes.
But is that where you were liberated at that point? Yes.
Well, I didn't get liberated until about another 2-3 hours afterward.
Okay. Thanks. Thank you.
So next up, we have Tech Sergeant Chuck Richardson, U.S. Army Air Force, served in the European theater in the 571st Bomb Squadron, the 390th Bomb Group out of East Anglia. Participated in missions on D-Day, missions during the Bulge, shuttle missions to the Soviet Union. And Chuck, how about, can you tell us a bit about your experience in the war?
First of all, I want to thank this organization for the opportunity to meet with you and to tell you a little bit about what we learned from our experiences. But you're so kind to pay our way on such a wonderful trip and meet such wonderful people. I can't explain to you how much it means to me. It's been 80 years since D-Day, and I'm still thrilled that people come up to me and thank me for what I did. But I wanted to tell you about D-Day because that's what we're celebrating here today. Our normal bomb load was 10 500-pound bombs. And on D-Day, when we got to our ship, the bomb load went to 12, and they hung a 1,000-pound bomb under each wing of our B-17. Our pilot took one look at it and said, there's no way we can get off the ground with this kind of weight. But to compensate for it, it was just across the channel, so we didn't have to use very much gasoline. So what we saved in weight in gasoline, we added in bombs. But the preparations that the Germans made along the coast of France were incredible. Those bunkers on the top of those hills, 100 foot high, were 17 feet thick with concrete. Our bombs hit the top of them and just bounced off. And when our people landed, they popped out of their holes and started shooting them down. And I want you to know that I was one of the few that was there 5 minutes before our landing at D-Day. And watched our first boys come ashore. And you would be so proud to see these young men, 18, 19 years old, when they jumped off of these boats, they couldn't get to the shore, so they jumped off in the water and headed for the shore. Do you think they was looking for a hiding place? They were headed for that beach and ready to do whatever they had to do to get the thing done. You would have been so proud. And I watched as 2,400 boys were murdered on the beach that day. And we went back, when we flew in to drop our bombs 5 minutes before the landing, we went down into France, made a big turnaround. There's thousands and thousands of airplanes in the air. And we came back over the D-Day landings. It was a rainy day. We came in, we dropped our bombs at 18,000 feet. But our pilot said, we're going down and see what's going on. So he dropped down to 12,000 feet. And I was able to see those boys coming ashore, hundreds of them at a time, being mowed down by the Germans from the high cliffs that protected the beach. So I wanted you to know, we got back to our base and thought we were through, and they said, we're loading you back up and you're going back. So we loaded up and started back, and they called us off because one of the bomb groups dropped short, killed 500 Americans. So they called off the bombing because they didn't want to kill any more boys that were breaking through the German lines. Now, there's so many things I could tell you about the war, my other experiences, such as a mission to Russia. We flew from Russia, flew from England, bombed Germany, and landed in Russia. We were there for 8 days. And right where they're fighting today is a town called Zaporozhye. And when that after we landed there, the Germans followed us that night, and the American public was never told this, but 93 B-17s were destroyed on the ground by the Germans that night. None of our men were hurt because they had dug a hole in the ground and put some straw bedding in there for us to sleep on. And so we weren't close to the plane, but to see that many of our planes just destroyed and burning on the field. with what was left, we loaded up, bombed Germany again on the way to Italy. And while we were in Italy, we flew one mission, and 8 days later we left there, bombed France, and landed back in England. There are hundreds of stories that I could tell you of.
But share some of those for when they're talking to you aboard ship.
Yes.
And then we have Seaman Edward Tresh. There he is. Merchant Marine, joined the Merchant Marine in 1944 and served in the Merchant Marine as an able-bodied seaman until 1947, both on the Caribbean South American run, but also across the Pacific. And so, sir, please share with us what are your big takeaways and experiences from the war?
Well, thank you, but I don't believe I should be up here with all these veterans, all the heroes. All I was an old seaman. But anyway, I'm a high school dropout. It's going to be very obvious because you can tell by my pronunciation and enunciation and my control of grammar, which I have none. But I do speak two languages fluently. One of them is Ninth Ward, and the other one is Yak. And those from Louisiana should know what that is. And I hope some people out there can interpret that for people who don't know what the hell a neutral ground is, a jambalaya or gumbo, you know? But anyway, I was asked to speak, and I was advised by my family, don't go up there and embarrass us. So I thought about it, and I said, hell, I got to tell them. My experience with the war started like everybody else on the radio that Sunday when they had mentioned that there was bombing in Pearl Harbor. But being a merchant seaman, and let me tell you, I have never been called a veteran until 33 years after the war. We finally got recognized, and thanks to the World War II Museum and a lot of other people. But my experiences was a little different from most of these heroes. I wanted to join the United. I don't know whether you want to hear all this because it gets pretty boring, but I wanted to join the Navy, not because of the patriotism too much, but because I found out at 15 years old that when the girls you want to go out with were going with the guys in the uniform. I said, well, I got to get in the Navy. My dad was a World War I, II Navy veteran on a destroyer. So I said, I'm going to do that. So I have to be brought down to the recruiting officer at the Custom House in New Orleans, and walk into the recruiting office, and so my mother brought me, by the way. My dad was a night worker. But anyway, I walked into the recruiting officer, and he said, what do you want, boy? I knew I was in trouble right there. I said, I'd like to join the Navy. He said, well, how old are you? I said, I'm 18. My mother, who didn't want me to go, said, he's only 16. And after he said, how much you weigh? I said, I weigh 122 pounds. He says, no, you're even too light. You're not even old enough. But go next door to the Merchant Marines. They'll take anybody. Sure enough, 2 days later, I'm on a Pullman going to St. Petersburg, Florida, at a maritime training station run by the Coast Guard. And when I got there, they had uniforms for me. I got whites and blues and dungarees. Oh, by the way, dungarees are not called jeans. So anyway, and the first thing that greets me, all these guys outside the camp saying, "You'll be sorry." I said, "Okay, let's go." So what I found out also was that they're going to teach me seamanship. Not seamanship so much, but you have to get a lifeboat certificate to become an able-bodied seaman. So the next couple of weeks, I spent a lot of time rowing lifeboats around Tampa Bay. Anyway, I got through that. I learned how to load and fire 20-millimeter guns, which I never had to do, but I was considered a fear, you know. Anyway, I'm getting one of those Biden moments. It's not easy for me to do this. I'm trying like hell to make it funny, and that the war was not funny by any means. And going back to the Merchant Marine, nobody even knew what the hell they were, really. But when I'd get some leave after a trip, "What are you doing now, Eddie?" I said, "I'm in the Merchant Marine." He said, "Where's that?" You know. There were even the seamen in the Navy didn't have too much respect for us sometimes because they figured we were being overpaid. Well, $1.50 a day was pretty good money in those times. Yeah, but anyway, something about the Merchant Marine. Did you know that 17 minutes before the first bomb fell in Pearl Harbor, the Japanese sank an American Merchant Marine ship? The first plane, kamikaze, sank the first American Merchant Marine ship. And that's it. What kind of war was I in, you know? But anyway, we had a gun crew on the ship, and they just installed looked like to me artillery piece rather than a gun that belongs on the ship. And I had a quarters under the gun deck with about maybe 16, 17 inches from the deck itself. And there was no armor on this type of ship. Going back to this ship was after coming out of the spit and polish Coast Guard who was teaching us how to be a seaman, because it was run by the Coast Guard, and it was like the Navy. Had all the uniforms and everything you wanted to. So I'm looking forward to getting on a ship that was nice. Well, they drove me down to the Mobile docks at Alcoa aluminum shop, factory rather. And I'm looking at all these new ships, the new Liberties and all. I said, "Man, these are nice." They said they only got 3 men to a forecastle, which was good because after you're on a training vessel, you got a lot of people around you. But anyway, they drove me up to a ship. It was the dirtiest looking ship I ever saw in my life. And I found out that it was a bauxite haul from Dutch Guiana. And it also had a lot of lampblack. Well, I found out what lampblack was. That's nothing but soot. And here comes Mr. Biden again.
Well, thanks a lot, Mr. Ed.
So we've got a couple more rounds of questions, but I think instead,
Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause for all of our honored veterans with us for this special morning to kick off this special cruise.